AITA for not staying with my wife after her C-section. This has been a whirlwind of a week, and I feel torn about how everything played out. My wife and I recently welcomed our second child into the world, but things didn't go quite as we had planned. Now, I'm left questioning if I made the right choices or if I let her down when she needed me the most. Let me give you the full story so you can decide. The induction and early labor. My wife's pregnancy this time around was rough, physically and emotionally. Her first pregnancy happened during the UK lockdown, and because of the restrictions at the time, I wasn't allowed to stay with her overnight in the hospital. It was a lonely and stressful experience for her, and she often told me how much she wished I could have been there. So, this time, she asked me to stay with her every night in the hospital. She's naturally an anxious person, and the idea of being left alone again, especially with staff she didn't feel comfortable asking for help, made her uneasy. I agreed without hesitation. She was carrying our child after all, and I wanted to support her in any way I could. Fast forward to the weekend. At 2 a.m. Sunday morning, we arrived at the hospital for her induction. They started her on hormones, but labor was progressing slowly. By 9 a.m., she told me to go home and rest, saying she would need me more when things got serious. I reluctantly agreed, wanting to conserve my energy for when she truly needed me. I came back that evening, ready to stay the night, but again, she insisted I go home around midnight. She reassured me that she was fine and encouraged me to get some sleep since she wasn't in active labor yet. The next morning, I was back at the hospital early, spending the day by her side, holding her hand and helping however I could. By 5 p.m., I went back to my parents' house to spend time with our daughter, who was staying with them. Then, at 1 a.m. Tuesday, I got a call from her. She thought she was finally in labor, but she didn't think the staff were taking her seriously. She sounded scared and frustrated, so I rushed to the hospital immediately. The emergency C-section. When I arrived, it was clear things had escalated. Just 3 hours later, she was taken in for an emergency C-section. The baby was born healthy, but it was a tense and exhausting experience for both of us. Watching her go through that surgery was emotional and draining, but I was so proud of how strong she was. Afterward, we were moved around the hospital a few times before finally settling into a ward by 4 p.m. Tuesday. Both of us were running on fumes, especially her. She'd just gone through major surgery and had barely slept. I did my best to help with the baby throughout the night so she could get some rest. Wednesday was more of the same. I stayed by her side all day, helping with feedings, diaper changes, and anything else she needed. We even managed to nap a bit during the day. It felt good to be there for her after such a harrowing delivery, and I was committed to staying as much as I could. The unexpected curveball. Then came the news that our baby had a minor health issue that required further observation. This meant we were moved to another ward where the baby could be monitored more closely. Here's where things took a turn. The new ward didn't have the pull-out beds that partners could use. Instead, there were only upright chairs for visitors. I've had lower back pain for years, and sitting in those chairs for extended periods is excruciating for me. Even with a cushion I brought to help alleviate the pain, I knew there was no way I could sit in that chair all night and still be functional the next day. I explained this to my wife, telling her that I physically couldn't stay overnight in those conditions. I assured her I'd come back as soon as visiting hours started the next morning, and that I'd stay all day to take over and give her as much rest as possible. Before leaving, I set everything up for her to make it easier. Diapers, bottles, wipes, all within reach. I also spoke to the night staff and emphasized that she might need extra support, as she was still in a lot of pain and understandably anxious. The fallout. When I told her I was leaving, she looked so hurt. She didn't say much, but her disappointment was clear. I knew she wanted me to stay, and honestly, I wanted to stay too. But the thought of sitting in that chair all night, getting no sleep, and dealing with my back pain was overwhelming. I thought it would be better for both of us if I got some rest, and came back recharged to support her during the day. When I returned early the next morning, she was polite but distant. She thanked me for coming back, but didn't seem as open or warm as before. Throughout the day, I did everything I could to make up for not staying the night. I took care of the baby almost entirely so she could rest, and I made sure she had everything she needed. But the tension lingered. That evening, she finally brought it up. She said she felt abandoned, like I wasn't keeping the promise I'd made to stay with her every night. She reminded me how anxious she felt asking the staff for help, especially in the middle of the night when she was exhausted and in pain. I tried to explain my side. I told her I wasn't trying to let her down, and that if I'd stayed, I would have been so sleep deprived and in pain that I wouldn't have been any help to her or the baby the next day. She said she understood, but I could tell she was still upset. My dilemma. Now, I can't stop questioning if I made the right call. On one hand, I physically couldn't sit in that chair all night without severely affecting my ability to function. On the other hand, I know how vulnerable my wife was in those moments and how much my presence would have meant to her. I've been doing everything I can to support her during the day, but I worry it's not enough. Did I fail her when she needed me most? Or was it reasonable to prioritize my own physical limits so I could be a better support for her and the baby during the day? So, Reddit, AITA for not staying with my wife after her C-section? Story 2. Aita for revealing that someone was molested and a victim of incest? My M31, wife F27, revealed to me yesterday that she had been molested by her father. I won't get into the details to spare her privacy, but I can say her father groomed her to replace her mother. She is in complete denial over it. In her eyes, it was a mistake that happened when he was struggling. He was deeply remorseful, and he has proven to her that he has overcome those demons. Obviously, that's just the grooming, making her see it that way. I get how complex the trauma must be. I want to support her, and I want to live the man, but she begged me to forget she told me. She said she only told me because she was sleep deprived from our newborn son and wasn't thinking. She said she never told me before because she knew I wouldn't be able to hide my feelings and hate her father. I might have been able to do that once, but now we have a child, and this man is a child predator. She claims he's not a danger. He would never do it again. She also said that he isn't a predator. He isn't into boys. It was a one-time thing. And she would always keep an eye on him to make sure our boy is safe. Never leave them alone, ECT. But I feel we can't guarantee our son would be safe. We can't take that risk. I think deep down she knows it too. I told her we either go and see with her father, allowing her to keep her secret, which makes me sick, but I respect it's her right to tell people or not, or I will reveal what the danger is for our son to keep him safe. Going as far as to divorce and seek custody, revealing that her father is a predator and she a victim in a public record court if I have to. I love my wife. I don't want to do this to her, and I don't want to live without her. She's an amazing partner and mother otherwise. She's truly selfless in all aspects except this. And I know this is just grooming and trauma blinding her to the obvious path we have to take. But I can't put my son in danger. She begged me not to, but after she realized it wasn't going anywhere, she agreed to going NC. She's going to talk with her father when they go to lunch next week. Ever since she's been in a complete fugue, I've never seen her like this. She's the eternal optimist. Nothing gets her down. She's always staring off into space or crying. It's like the light has left her. She's heartbroken, and I feel sick for doing this to her. I'm basically blackmailing a victim, the woman I love and mother of my child. I know I'm right. We have to protect our son, and we can't take the chance something could happen again. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it isn't my place to do this. I don't know. Thank you for listening. Story 3. Aita for going NC with Amael after she convinced my husband to ask for a paternity test because our baby looks too much like me. Sorry, this is going to be a long one, and I apologize in advance for any spelling mistakes. English isn't my first language. For months ago, me, 31F, and my husband, Mark, 32M, welcomed our first child, our daughter, Sophia. Me and Mark have been together for 10 years and married 6 years. Getting pregnant wasn't exactly a walk in the park. We were trying for 2 years before it finally happened, and I miscarried 4 times during those years. My parents died when I was 15, and I lived with my grandparents until I was 18 and started at college. My MIL has been like a mother to me and had been an amazing support ever since me and Mark got together. She made dinners and called daily to check up on me after the miscarriages. When Sophia was born, the first thing MIL did when she came to visit was to check up on how I was doing after the birth before focusing on Sophia. I remember thinking I had the best MIL anyone could ask for. She was the first person we told about our pregnancy at week 18, and she was over the moon about becoming a grandma. The first 4 weeks after we got home from the hospital, she moved in with us to help out with Sophia. She was so helpful and always made sure she didn't overstep in any way. My MIL always talked about how Sophia was a mini version of me and told everyone about how my daughter was a true copy of me. Mark was in love with our little girl and did everything he could to help out. He came home early every day to spend as much time as he could with Sophia and me. Everything seemed perfect. This was what we had wanted for so long. All he could talk about was how perfect our little girl was and how much she looked like me. He even found some old pictures of me and made a photo collage of me and her as babies to put on the wall. After my MIL moved home, I think I saw her a couple of times and would only speak to her if I called her. But TBH, I didn't think much of it as I was busy with being a mother. After the first 2 months, Mark started getting more distant and coming home late. He started to spend a lot of time at his mother's house, as he said she needed help with some renovations in her house. I appreciated all the help MIL had given us, so I decided to not complain about it, even though I was exhausted from never getting an hour to myself anymore. Right after Sophia turned 3 months, Mark came home and said we needed to talk. He sat me down and told me he wanted a paternity test because his mother thinks our child looked too much like me and nothing like him. My jaw was on the floor, and I felt something inside me break. He doubled down with saying he agreed with Sophia looking like me and nothing like him, and that Emile had told him I probably cheated with someone who has some of the same features as me. Emile claims that their family genes are super strong, and Sophia should have some of Mark's features if she was his. After he was done talking, I couldn't get a word out. I just started crying. It feels like the biggest betrayal that they both accuse me of cheating, and the reason being my daughter looks too much like me. He told me he was sorry, but his mother got into his head, and he couldn't let it go, and it was constantly on his mind. I just felt defeated by the whole situation, and agreed to the paternity test. Although I told him that when the test came back telling Sophia is his daughter, I wanted nothing to do with MIL. And we would have to start couple counseling if there was any hope at all for this relationship to be saved. Fast forward to now. The test came back a week ago, and surprise, surprise, she is his daughter. He had this look of relief before the guilt and panic hit him, and he started to apologize to me over and over again. I told him he needed to tell his mother, and then tell her we needed a break from her. Surprisingly, he was all for it, and I could hear him yelling at her for making him doubt me, and telling her we didn't want any contact for a while. Mark blocked her number after hanging up, so she started to call and text me. It switched from that she was sorry, and I was horrible for not seeing it from her point of view and taking away her family. I blocked her too, but some of his extended family has messaged both Mark and me calling us cold-hearted off for cutting MIL out the way we have. I have started to doubt my decision, thinking I was too harsh after being hurt. Maybe I made a mistake by distancing ourselves from MIL. After all, she was just looking out for her only son. So Reddit, Aita,